Welcome to Oklahoma Gardening. If you've got any strawberries in your home garden, you will already have been enjoying several strawberry shortcakes and been busy putting up frozen strawberries and strawberry jam. Our earliest variety, Sunrise, in this row, we've pretty much finished all the harvest on it. Our Cardinal and other later varieties are either in the middle of the harvest or just starting to come into harvest. When you get done with the harvest on your strawberries, if you've got a nice matted row, nice bed of matted row plants like we've got on these, it seems a shame to do anything to them. It's very tempting just to let them go another year and just leave them as it is. That's probably one of the worst things that you can do. One of the worst weeds in a strawberry bed is strawberry plants. As you know, they sends out runners and it's filled in the bed. If you left it as it is, it would still produce more runners and it would become so overcrowded that none of those individual plants would have enough light, moisture, or fertilizer to become vigorous and to produce a good crop of flowers and thus a good crop of fruit for next year. So if you just left it as it is, you wouldn't get as good a harvest next year. You may not get much of any harvest at all. Plus, your beds are going to keep getting bigger and bigger, and all of these varieties would just blend into one solid mass of plants, and it would not be a good situation at all. So what we need to do is renovate these plants, and that involves several steps, which we'll get into. First thing is, if you have any skips in your rows, you may want to dig up a few of the small young plants along the edge and set them aside to fill in those gaps after we get done with the renovation. But the first step is to mow off the plants. And for that, you just use your regular, ordinary lawnmower. You will have to do some adjustment of the mower deck. You need to have it set at one of the highest or the highest setting of the height. You want it at least 2.5 inches off the ground. 3 inches is much better. At this height, you don't have to worry about actually doing any damage to the strawberry plants. We've got a lot of foliage here, but the actual growing point of the strawberry plant, which is the crown, is way down at the ground surface or just slightly above, ½ inch at the most above the ground. And this is where all the growth occurs. This is where the new leaves are formed, the flowers are formed, the fruiting stalk. All of this top growth is just the leaves, the leaf stalk, and the old fruiting clusters. And if you have the mower set it at the proper height, all you're removing are the leaves. The actual plant itself and the growing point is not damaged in any way, and the plant will easily recover and start growing again. And don't worry about removing all of this leaf surface. It has never been shown to do any harm to the plants. It's done mostly to get all this foliage out of the way so that you can easily do the second step, which is rototilling to get rid of the extra plants. But it doesn't do the plant any damage. As a matter of fact, it's been shown to increase flower bud formation compared to not mowing the leaves off and just getting rid of the extra plants. So getting rid of those leaves doesn't do any harm and actually does some good. I took and mowed in one direction to throw all the leaves and other stuff out this way because we still are harvesting our later varieties and we didn't want all the trash in with the berries we're going to be picking. Now this, the leaves and the scraps, you can either rake it up, put it in the compost pile, or just rake it back onto the bed so it will be tilled in later steps. Either way, it doesn't make any difference. It's perfectly good, usable organic matter for either compost or just to put into your strawberry bed. Now, all spring we've been nagging at you not to put on any fertilizer, and especially nitrogen fertilizer, in the spring. Now, if you remember from what it was and from what you can see here, we've got plenty of leaf growth, more than adequate, and we haven't put on any nitrogen. The last nitrogen this planting saw was last year. If we had put on any nitrogen, we would have much lusher growth, and we would have too many leaves covering up the fruit, not allowing them to dry off as much, and having increased problems with rot inside that bed. So as you can see, even with no nitrogen, we have perfectly adequate leaves. But at renovation is the time to put on fertilizer. The best way to find out how much and what type of fertilizer you need is by taking a soil sample, having a soil test run, and following the instructions. In our particular patch, we don't need any phosphorus or potassium. The pH has already been adjusted, so all we need is nitrogen fertilizer. So what we're going to use is ammonium nitrate. For a 25-foot row, such as we have, you'll need a half a pound of ammonium nitrate, or if you need to use a complete fertilizer, 1.5 pounds of fertilizer, such as a 10-10-10, is sufficient for that 25-foot of row. If you want to use composted manure or other compost to add in for organic matter, now is the time to put that on so it gets tilled in along with the fertilizer at the renovation. So we have our half pound. If you don't have a scale, just remember that a pound of most of the fertilizers measures about 1 pint. So your half a pound of ammonium nitrate is equivalent to about a cup of ammonium nitrate. Spread it over the full width of your bed, because that is the amount of soil that the plants will eventually be using. You'll also notice that we've got quite a bit of the small fruit, small berries that were still left behind when we mowed off the top. Because we had the later varieties coming in and starting their production now, we didn't worry with these smaller fruits, so it's not that great a loss. You can normally easily wait until you've harvested all of the fruit, and in this case you've noticed we're doing this one row while the later varieties we're saving for after they finish ripening. You can easily let all of these rows wait until after the harvest of your last variety. You don't need to do it immediately, right that second, that week that harvest ends. Within a few weeks, there's no problem. So we've got the tops mowed. You will have either taken care of the tops that we've mowed off, rake them up, or put them back on top, put on your fertilizer, put on any compost that you want, and now comes the tilling. We still have just as many plants as we had before we did any mowing. If we did nothing else, we would be no further ahead, because every single one of these crowns would start putting out leaves and become a new plant. What we want to do is rototill down both sides and leave ourselves just a strip about 6 to 8 inches wide down the middle of where the bed was. And what this does, it leaves a strip of undisturbed plants which will go ahead and put out leaves and send out runners. And it puts us back into the situation like we had before, with just when we first planted the bed, with a narrow strip of plants which will then put out runners and form our new bed. The tiller doesn't need to go 6 to 8 inches deep. You only need a couple 3 inches of depth The important part is to chop out these unwanted plants and just leave the ones in the middle. Once you get the extra plants tilled up, that pretty much completes renovating the strawberry bed. You can use other methods for getting rid of the plants, either a hoe or some sort of cultivator in a small flower bed up next to your house, if that's where you've got your strawberry plants. Even just hand pulling and weeding most of the plants out will serve perfectly well. Your big objectives are to remove most of the plants and get your fertilizer on for new growth. You can see we've left our 6 to 8 inch band down the middle. Now the edges where we've tilled up the crowns are still in there pretty much as crowns. You will probably, since these are perennial plants, need to come in at least one more time to till them through to get a good kill on them. It's quite possible you'll get at least some of them resprouting and coming up again. It's important that you get rid of them. Treat all these extra plants that you've tilled up, those are weeds. You want to get rid of them. This narrow strip down the middle is the only strawberry plants that you want to leave. If you do happen to get a ½ inch or so of soil thrown up on top of your middle strip, don't worry about it. As these crowns grow, they will grow about a ½ inch up out of the ground each year. So that extra ½ inch is probably to your benefit. So don't worry about that at all. Within a few weeks, these crowns that are left are going to send up new leaves, and they'll start sending out new runner plants and start filling in our new raised bed for next year. It's important that you take care of your strawberry bed through the summer. These first runner plants that come out and start to get established, if you take care of them properly, they're going to be large-sized plants by the end of summer and into fall. The larger the plants are, when they get into that period of time, that's when the flower buds are being set. The larger the plant, the more flower buds are going to be set, the bigger crop you're going to have next year. So you've got your bed narrowed, you've put your fertilizer down at renovation, and that should be the only fertilizer you need until renovation next year. And make certain that you keep the water on them so that your bed will establish and grow vigorously. So take care of your strawberry bed now, and so while you're enjoying your jams and jellies that you made this year, you can be growing a good bed to be producing the fruit for next year's jams and jellies.